Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Turn the Page podcast. I am your host, Paige, and as always, I am so grateful to have you here. Once again, I am bringing on an exciting guest. We have Ashley Federer with us today, who is currently the state child welfare attorney for White County and is currently running for Superior Court judge. And if everything goes well, she will be the first woman elected as judge in White County. And as you know, yay raw women, we should rule the world. We are so supportive of that, so excited, and so just grateful to have her here to have a conversation with us today about her experience and a little bit about her life. So, Ashley, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. This is so cool. I've never done a podcast before. So when you asked, I was really excited, really grateful that you asked me to come and join you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. I have been expanding. So we're currently in season 2, which for me, I love to start passion projects, but sometimes can get burnt out very easily. So like this was like a huge milestone. Like I've been doing this for over a year now, still learning, but with season 2, I just wanted to start bringing in more guests so that people can hear other people talk and not just me. um, and just especially people in our community, because we live in the same community. It's very small. And I just want to start spotlighting some of the people that are doing really cool things. So
I
yeah.
love that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so let's go ahead and dive right in. If you want, go ahead and give us a little bit of your backstory. If you want to share maybe where you're from, the things in your life that have led you to where you are here at this moment.
Yeah. So I will tell you a little bit. So I didn't grow up. I get this question a lot. Are you from here? And I'm not. So I grew up in southern Indiana. So I grew up in Bedford, just south of Bloomington, which is limestone capital of the world. So that's our claim to fame. Um, but I grew up and I graduated from Bedford North Lawrence High School in 2005, which sounds like a really, really long time ago when I say that. But I was interested in the law. My mom will tell you I just like to argue a lot, so that came naturally. But I wanted to go to law school because I wanted to do something good. Um, I went to college at IUPUI, which is now IU Indianapolis. Majored in history just because
Learn something new every day.
Yes, well, they just changed. They separated the IU and the PU. So I majored in history because I'm kind of a nerd. So I will spout historical facts at my kids on a regular basis.
I love that.
Yeah. But I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to do something good. I was really influenced a lot. I had a really close friend, my best friend Carrie, killed in a car accident when I was in high school. So when I was 15. Um, and that experience really shaped me, like feeling that sort of grief and trying to make sense of it. It took me a long time to kind of find some sort of peace with it. But she was just the type of person um, that she loved everyone. I would say like she could find a baby within a mile radius and find it to love on. She just was a person that wanted to do good in the world. She wanted to make a difference. And that really influenced me as well. I think I might have gotten there on my own, but I think having her and getting to know her really impacted my life in a huge way. And from then I wanted to do something, one that would have made her proud too. That that would have, in a way, kind of bring her with me, do something good. So law was kind of always an idea, but that sort of cemented the idea for me that I wanted to go and fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves maybe, or um, that really needed that guidance and that assistance. And so because being an attorney really is seen as a counselor. So you're giving advice, but you're also helping to guide, you're educating people. There's a lot of education that goes into it because laws are made and you don't always, if you're reading them, it doesn't always make a lot of sense. So having the ability to help people understand, but also to guide them through what are often the most difficult situations of their lives, some
Yeah.
of the worst times in their lives, to be that kind of light for someone else.
Yeah.
So that had a big impact on me wanting to go into law. So I think that's kind of what led me there. When I started law school, I wanted to travel the world. I still love to travel. I wanted to do international law and do international rights, human rights. But then I met my husband, Andy, who was from Wolcott, Indiana.
Oh,
So
these guys, they always come in. Dang it. Dang
yeah,
it, love.
I know, and then, I loo he brought me up here, I started coming up here, and I came for the farmer and stayed for the community and the views. It
Yeah.
I Sunsets are beautiful in a lot of places, but sometimes our sunsets around here just hit different, like, just the color in the skyline, it's gorgeous, like, and I felt so welcomed here. So Andy was a big part of what brought me here. So we got married in 2010. So I've been here since then. And I was still in law school at the time, so I drove back and forth between Indianapolis and Wolcott for the last couple of years of law school, and I graduated in 2012, passed the bar that July, and started my own practice once I was sworn in October. Um, and I've kind of stayed around here ever since.
Yeah.
Just practicing law. I've been able to teach classes as well. I taught at St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer for a few years as well in their core program. So I was lucky enough to I got to I got to lecture on legal topics, even non-legal topics. I did a lecture once on um, John's Gospels and what he says about marriage, and so it was a really cool experience. But I also got to read. I like to read, and I got to read a lot of books and then discuss them with people. So I feel like that was a lot of fun, and it sort of enhanced I always feel like I'm always learning, so it sort of enhanced the way I practice as an attorney were from the things I learned from them and from that experience. And I also taught high school for a few years as well, teaching history, trying to make it exciting and fun, which kids do not always appreciate. But teachers, we do our best when we're in it, and I got to learn from some really wonderful educators, professors, teachers, people that are smarter than me, and I got to take pieces of that with me into my practice. So I never
Yeah.
really stopped practicing. I just sort of w took a turn and did some other things with it, but I think it helped make me a better attorney because I had a
Yeah.
better understanding of things that were outside of, just sort of the tunnel vision of this is my office, this is the law that I do. I got to interact with a lot more people in a lot of different situations that I wouldn't have otherwise, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think thank you so much for sharing um the what you went through as a child with losing your best friend. I can't imagine how hard that was. Um, and it's just when we can look back now, like as adults, and see these experiences that we had that were extremely hard as children and see how they shape who we become in this world, I think is keeping a piece of the person that we love's magic alive. And I think that that's so beautiful that you had that relationship at a young age. I mean, our friendships, I think our childhood friendships are such an impactful thing in our lives. And we don't necessarily realize it or appreciate it while it's happening. And so I think it's so cool that you've brought that piece, that magic with you and her ripple effect is still continuing through, your passion and your purpose in this life. And that can be like, it can be a really vulnerable thing. So I just appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Um and isn't it so interesting how we can have these people come into our lives, whether it's a best friend or a husband or a community, and they can really change the trajectory that we thought that we were going to travel, and find the gratitude and the appreciation and the lessons along the way. And from what it sounds like, you had such an array of experiences, and being able to take what you learn from each chapter and bring it into I forgot to turn my phone off. Bring it into this moment now. I mean, that's so cool. I think it's so cool too that you love history. I am not a history buff, but I think because for those listening, Ashley and I actually met in book club.
Yes.
So talking about books, the things that we learn, and the fact that like you always read books that are so different than the genres that I read. I think it's so cool and interesting to hear about those things and like pique your interest for other genres and other things that you can learn through books. And they're such a cool way to connect people. Um, and yeah, that's I don't know. I think it's just like really cool and exciting. And like I said, it sounds like you've had an array of people in your life that have kind of been it's like dropping the breadcrumbs, It's like
Yeah.
you never think of where it's going to lead you. You just kind of follow. And I think that that's really interesting. That's really exciting. What do you feel led you into now wanting to file your candidacy to become the Superior Court judge?
Yeah, like I said, my main goal in being an attorney was do something good, have an impact on your community, leave it better than you left it. Like that's the goal. In 2023, in August of 2023, I became the welfare attorney for White County, which I had done work on the other side as a public defender. I had worked with parents in criminal cases, but also in these juvenile cases. So seeing the impacts on families. And I feel like that sort of civil service, it has felt very much like home. I really enjoyed having my private practice. I got to know some really great people. I got to experience all different types of law, family law, bankruptcy, criminal. I did a lot of covered a lot of areas, but focusing on child welfare has and sort of that service, what feels like service to the community has been huge, and I feel like, when Brad Woolley announced that he wasn't going to run again in July, I initially thought, "Oh, okay, that's great." And someone asked me, "Hey, would you ever run?" And initially I was like, "No." And then I started thinking and I thought, "You know what? That's sort of taking it that service a step further. That's
Mhm.
a way to potentially have a bigger impact on the community
Yeah.
in that role, even more so than what I've been able to do in the last few years." So I think that was kind of one of the things that really led me to that was that decision of, you know what, actually, I think I can do this, and I think I should. So it
Yeah.
was sort of that like gnawing in the back of your mind where you think like, should I, shouldn't I? And then you just can't let it go until finally I was like, you know what, I think I need to do this, and I
Yeah.
think I need to try to do this.
Absolutely. I was having a conversation even just the other day with someone, and it's like our intuition is the piece that will always come in first. Our intuition will always come in first and be the thing that's trying to lead us to what's next. But very quickly after, it's usually the fears or the doubts or like, who am I to do this? What do I think I'm doing? Why am I doing this? This is really stepping out of my comfort zone. And
Yes.
I think that with life, the older that we get, specifically as women, like our intuition is so powerful. And
Oh, yeah.
it's like that intuition when we can learn to follow it so much quicker, so much faster, those fears and those doubts still exist, but they get quieter, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Yeah.
have definitely experienced the outside the comfort zone because I am typically give me a good book and hide me away. I will be a wallflower. I think you said we met in book club, and I am typically like a quiet one. I'm not usually one like I'm just not an out. I'm definitely an introvert. So running for judge and deciding to put my candidacy out there, and put myself on the ballot was definitely stepping outside my comfort zone, and to be honest, I think that really is what makes us grow
Yeah.
because so far I've been campaigning the last several weeks really hard, trying to knock on as many doors as possible. Um, I've gotten to meet some really fantastic people in White County that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think even just, going door to door, that's not something that I would have ever thought like, "Yes, let's I'm gonna do that." That's just not something that's in my repertoire. I would not ordinarily just, like, start knocking on people's door and be like, "Hey, vote for me, please," Um, "Let me tell you why I should be judged." Like, all of it is very uncomfortable in a way, but it's also, I think, that, like, intuition of I should be doing this, but also as a way of getting uncomfortable to help us grow, to
Mhm.
quiet further those fears, that doubt, those things that say, "Maybe you can't do this."
Yeah.
It's it's really forced me to sort of say to that, like, put that aside and say, "No, you can. You can do this."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such a great example when we're in, our 30s and our 40s and our kids and younger people around us can see that even as you get older, it's still important to keep putting yourself in those positions to get uncomfortable so that you can grow. Do you feel like this has led to some really impactful conversations with younger generations or with your own children about stepping out of your comfort zone and growth and things like that?
I think it has. On the day particularly the day I went to file my candidacy, I had told my kids, I said, "Hey, this doesn't seem, I'm just turning in paperwork. This really shouldn't be." But I said, "Honestly, guys, I'm really nervous." I drove them to school that day, and my daughter handed me a sticker that said, "I think mom," and she said, "I think mom, you need this," and it said she believed she could, so she did.
Oh,
So like she got it that, and both my kids were like, "Hey, I understand that seems really hard and that's scary." And so we had a conversation. We did have a conversation about sometimes things are scary, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do them.
yeah.
That like things feel like they're big and they're scary, but kind of overcoming those fears because there's a bigger purpose.
Yeah.
And so and just getting the feedback from them, like they've been so supportive. Like, my kids have been amazing.
Yeah.
And even, like, the door knocking, going door to door, my Aiden's 13 at this stage. He probably is I'm getting a lot of side hugs and a lot of, when I go to hug him. But he's, volunteered to say, "Mom, I wanna come knock doors with you. I wanna walk with you."
Oh,
Um, and so it's been kind of a bonding experience for that, but also people have been really interested to talk to him. And so I think it's been a really good experience for him to handshake with people, answer questions with people he's never met before. And they'll
absolutely.
ask him about school and how things are going. And so even for him, having that experience of getting out there has actually been great. And people have been so kind and so kind to both my kids. Um, but it has opened up so many different, conversations about, like, maybe this is uncomfortable or they've seen me be nervous,
Yeah.
walking up to someone's house to knock on a door, or, um, I went to Indiana Farm Bureau, had a meet and greet night, and I spoke at that. We had, 3 minutes to kind of speak for each candidate, and they saw me. They could tell. They were like, "You're nervous." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is uncomfortable." And they're like, and afterward, they were both said they came up and hugged me and told me, "Hey, I'm really proud of you, mom. That was I
Aw.
know you were scared, but you did good." And I was like, "That's guys, I love you so much." Like, I think maybe it's helped them see that you don't being vulnerable, being scared does not make you weak. It is
Yeah.
actually you're stronger for it and you grow through it. So I think having those lessons for them has been huge.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's such a powerful statement, and I think especially for young men, I mean, we hear a lot in the world right now. It's like, you know, we want to empower women. We want to, like stand up and be true and be authentic. And I think sometimes it's like we can forget part of the conversation of like empowering young men too to live differently than the narratives that we have seen, you know, in previous generations. And so him being able to like see you vulnerable and then like, reflect that vulnerability by also going door to door and like shaking hands with people. Like I think that that's such a skill. Like
Yes.
people forget how to greet others with the respect of a handshake. I know when I meet somebody new, I'm, like, always the first one, like, going in for it, and there's some
Yeah.
times where people, like, look at me like, "What are you doing? Like, what is that? Like, what do you mean?"
We've
And
lost that somewhere.
yeah, somewhere, I don't know if it was, like, COVID, I don't know if it's the
Yeah.
internet, like, what has happened, but that, like, separation of that, like, physical contact, that physical connection, I think is such an important, powerful skill for young children to learn, and so you saying, like, how your kids have responded, I think says a lot to you about you as a mother and the ripple effect that this experience is going to lead through them. And, you never know, like, where maybe, he'll have an interest in getting involved in politics someday or, something like that. But still pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and what that ripple effect is leading and teaching through your kids, I think is such a beautiful reflection and just a cool exciting thing. It leads to awesome conversations. It leads to, like you were saying, like family bonding in an
Yeah.
entirely new, different way, which yeah, like that's just so cool.
Yeah, they've been able to take from it too, like, they're like, "This is a lot of work." Like, they're kind of getting this behind the scenes. I've never campaigned for anything, so they're getting kind of the idea of like, "Man, this takes a lot," but they've also been right there with me for a lot of it. They've
Yeah.
really volunteered quite a bit more than I thought than I even thought they would, but just, like, they're seeing that hard work and, um, I know, my kids have both been like, "Mom, we really want you to win this. We think you'd be great." And I'm like, "Gosh, you guys are like the best cheerleaders. I just need to carry you around with me every day."
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's they're bettering me up because they want something.
You never know. It's always a
Sometimes
50-50.
you don't know. But no, I think we've had a lot of honest conversations. We've had a lot of time in the car, driving around, putting out signs, like just opening those things up. And I think for both my kids, this has actually been a good experience. I think they're gonna be ready for it to be done.
Yeah.
The election is May 5th, and that's the primary date. I think they're they're ready for that primary date to get here. But at the same time, I'm really, regardless of the outcome, happy that we've had this experience and this time and these
Yeah.
conversations and this growth kind of as a family together. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's been great.
That's so cool. And for them to be able to see you outside of just being their mom, seeing you within the community, seeing you interact with other people, seeing you, represent yourself, your position, the things that you wish to accomplish, um, is I think it's really good for kids. It's really good for kids to be able to see that there is a duality. Like we are more than just moms.
Right.
And we're more than just our careers, but it's like them to be able to experience, each side of who we are allows them to also exist in the different, roles that they play within the world. And I think that that's like a really important lesson too. It's like, hey, there is a whole other person to me outside of just being your mom, and then them getting to come along for the ride to like get to know that person.
Yes, they have experienced a lot. I think, um, for them to because as an attorney, I take confidentiality very seriously, so even when things happen or they'll say, "I heard this," they might say, "Did you hear about this?" I'm not telling you all anything.
Yeah.
Everyone knows I won't talk about anything that I might know, might not know, so explaining to them exactly what mom does as an attorney, I can give them like a general basis and they often want examples. So I'm trying to it's a balance. So for them to kind of actually, they can't come to court with me. They can't
Yeah.
for my office what I do is confidential. So they can't sit with me and sit in and kind of watch what I actually do. So this has been giving them kind of an idea of, oh, these are things that mom does. Like
Mhm.
this is mom as a career adult, not just mom at home. So it has been fun, and we've been able to talk a little bit more about even civics, the idea of voting and, why you should vote and why it's important and what courts actually do, and, um, so it's been very educational. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I bet. I bet that's so exciting, especially with your history as being a teacher. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of being able to like bring all of those aspects of your journey so far into this experience. And on that note, do you want to give us a little background on the differences between like the circuit court and the superior court so that people kind
Yeah.
of understand what it is that you will be representing, um, for those, like, who don't really know. I'm kind of one of those people. I don't really know. So I
Yeah.
think it's cool to, like, learn and, understand it.
So every county in Indiana by the Constitution is has a circuit court. So circuit courts for the first courts, and every county has one. And those every county will always have one unless they alter or amend the Constitution. Superior courts were added because of numbers. So, one judge or one circuit court judge can only handle so much. So superior courts were added as a way to keep things moving in the court system and not overload just having one court. So Wyatt County just has the circuit court and one superior court, but if you go to larger counties such as Tippecanoe, they have multiple superior courts, and that's because they'll have the one circuit and then the multiple superior based on kind of volume, number of cases. So in Superior Court, how the cases are allocated currently for White County, Superior Court handles all of the criminal work. So adult criminals, misdemeanors, felonies, major felonies, all of those are handled in the Superior Court. Evictions, civil cases can be in either circuit or superior. But circuit handles mainly juvenile law, so child in need of services cases, juvenile delinquency, family law cases. So if you're divorces, guardianships, things like probate, things like that, um, those are handled in the circuit court. I've gotten a lot of questions about like, is that all that they handle? How they allocate cases again is based on numbers. So they're trying to
Mhm.
keep it even so one court isn't overloaded. And the case allocations of what is heard in what court can change based on numbers, or even judge preference as long as the numbers end up even. So, for example, Carroll County at the end of last year reallocated their cases. So, misdemeanors were being heard in Superior, felonies in Circuit. They swapped that to juvenile cases were in Superior, and family law cases were all in Superior, and all the criminal is in the Circuit Court. So
Okay.
it can be changed based on based on numbers, but also, I know some judges prefer to do criminal or prefer to do family. just sort of depends. And the two courts can determine, if those things need to be reallocated. And how that is determined each year, the courts put out what are called local rules of the court. And in those local rules, it sets out what cases are filed in which court. And
Okay.
so it's just a matter of overall looking, how can we keep it even so you don't have one judge that's just really overloaded.
Yeah.
Um, so for right now, the way it's set up in White County is all the adult criminal is in Superior. So that's primarily what I would be handling, unless something were to change. That would be
Yeah.
primary that as well as like evictions, and civil cases like torts, so things like that.
Okay. So then when they change, like when they allocate differently, who kind of determines that? Like who kind of starts that narrative? Is that the judges or is there like another system set up in place to like take a look at that?
So, the judges take a look at it as well, but the state courts, so our state courts will look at numbers as well. So they keep track of all of those things of case numbers as well. And the judges do have some say in that, but part of it is just based on numbers and what the state court offices are looking at as far as numbers.
Okay. So interesting. Yeah, I think it is. It's so interesting to learn and to understand in different ways. Because a lot of times, people can show up to vote and I know I have done this where it's like you show up to exercise your right to vote and then there's so many different things that are being voted on and you're just like, I don't know
Yeah.
what this is, like pick, and it's like you do
Yes.
kind of just like can find yourself in that situation. So I think that it's interesting. I always learn better from another person than like Googling things. So it's better for me to learn like conversationally through other people and their experiences than it is like me sitting down and like doing doing like that kind of research on those systems and things like that. So I think it's super great to be able to like give that information to people in a different way. Are you currently running against multiple other candidates?
So there is just one other candidate, Robert Little. He practices out of Tippecanoe County. He's the chief public defender for Tippecanoe County. He's been doing that for a little while. I have a lot of respect for him as an attorney. I think he's a good attorney. Um, so he's a little bit older than I am. So I think that we talk about experience.
Okay.
Um, and there is something to trial experience, but all attorneys, we're required to know the rules of evidence. And that's really when we're talking from the judicial side of it, that's kind of the difference is you're no longer, once you're a judge, you're no longer putting the case on. You're no longer questioning the witnesses and determining what evidence goes in. Your job is to determine whether the evidence should come in. And whether something violates an evidentiary rule and whether or not the facts that are presented fit with the law that we have. So it's a different side of it. So while that experience in trials, which we all have, I've done a
Mhm.
lot of trial work myself too, in the juvenile cases. Um, that's really important. It's a different. You're on a different side of it, so
Yeah.
you're not so much worried as of that presentation as you are. Is it fair? Is everyone able to be heard? Following the trial rules, evidence rules, and the law. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the difference there.
What do you feel like as a woman you bring into those situations differently than a man? Like, do you feel like there is a difference? Because I feel like there's a difference in everything. There's like the light and the shadow and all of it. But what do you feel through your experience and you as a person, as a woman, bringing into that scenario and those situations that could, you know, really highlight what you bring to the table?
Yeah. I think as women, one of the things that comes to mind is just juggling, just
Mhm.
sheer juggling. If you think about the roles and responsibilities, not to say that dads as parents aren't juggling as well, but moms are often juggling a lot. And from my experience, at one point, we did own a custom candle shop in Lafayette, Rose and Wick, which is still open and run. So plug for that. But we were running that business. I had my law office, um, and switched during that time to child welfare. I was a mom, a wife. Just the number of hats that we have, I think, gives women the ability to really understand others, because you can understand the number of hats that you are wearing and how that makes you feel. So I think in a way there's a certain amount of understanding and compassion that women are able to have. Again, not saying men couldn't have it, but one, naturally, and two, just by how we're built,
Yeah.
and the number of experiences that we have, and the way that we're shaped by them. I think sometimes, the same instance could happen to a man, and they're not necessarily internalizing it the way that women are. And so I think that that does lead us to be a bit more compassionate and understanding. Um, but also I don't know about you, but my experiences have made me have to be a little more tough. Like,
Yeah.
you're you have to have a thick skin
Yeah.
and you have to develop that. I think even as an attorney, I think early on in my career, I had other attorneys, when I had my first child, that told me that I basically having a baby would ruin my career. I would never have a good legal career. My practice would suffer. Like, kids would ruin my life, like, basically. Um so,
Gosh.
having
Yeah.
to deal with that, and then having to deal with, honestly, sexism, like,
Yeah.
a lack of respect, from some other attorneys early on when I started, I think those are things that some often men don't deal with, so they
Mhm.
don't develop that sort of ability to navigate those issues and have to build that toughness.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like in some ways women, especially as you move up in positions, sort of that breaking the glass ceiling, you've had to work sometimes twice as hard to earn the same respect. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so
Absolutely.
understanding that hard work and sort of that grit and determination and this is one of the things, like, if you want me to really, like, go hard at something, tell me I can't do it.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, this isn't for you, because that's sort of, and I think women often get that of this really isn't for you. This is, early, like I said, early when I started, I got a lot of, well, this is like a man's job. You're entering into a male dominated field. This really isn't for you. And so that knowing that you're gonna have to work twice as hard.
Mhm.
Um, I think all of those experiences, I almost want to say little traumas that you overcome as a woman, and some of the things that you face when you try to move up and you try to enter into something that is maybe male dominated, or that is, um, not traditionally female,
Mhm.
then you're building that grit and that resilience.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that, you know, our empathy, our intuition, our compassion, our ability to have so many different perspectives because we do play so many different roles on a regular basis is a great, I mean, that's just like a great narrative, I mean, that's just like a great foundation for what somebody in those situations as a judge can bring into those situations. And, as you said, being a woman coming into a male dominated career, you do have to work twice as hard. Like you have to work twice as hard. And as women in the world, we have to fight twice as hard for the things that we want. We have to be more hyper vigilant because we are we're not always safe. Like we're entering into these situations in the world that, like, we're not always safe. I have conversation with both my daughter's dads on a regular basis. I'm like, have you ever had to stop and actively think about where you park in a parking lot? if it's dark and you're there at night. Like
Yeah.
these are the things as me as a woman and as a mother I think about, and these are the things that your daughters are going to have to think about. And you attain different skills within the world, the ways in which you interact with people. And I think that that gives us that extra layer of grit, because it's like
Yep.
you every time you leave your house, it's like these are all of the things that are running through our minds. And a lot of times they're things that a man never has to think twice about. And again, I don't believe in the whole, like, men, like women above men. I think that there's an
Right.
equality, I believe in equality. And I think that there are, strengths that we all possess to be able to show up in every situation in life. But I think for a long time, we've lived in a world where the feminine has been suppressed, and we're seeing that come alive. And as we step into these new roles, these new chapters, utilizing our voice in different ways, I think it's really cool to see how the power of being a woman can be highlighted and shown in an entirely new, different way. So kudos to you for like
Thank you.
fighting all of that, the sexism and people trying to put you in a box of like, okay, well, you decided to have a kid. So guess what? This is who you are now. And it's like,
Right.
I'm sorry, no.
Yeah, it's been an interesting, and you know what? The kids have made me better. They
Yeah.
made me a better person, a better attorney. Like they made me want to fight harder for to make, I wanted to do good. I wanted to leave the world a better place, but now I have them. They're going to be it, and I want to leave that for them better. So that sort of pushes me even further that, I'm doing it for them, and they sort of drive that as well. So it makes me better than I think if I didn't have them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's so, everybody's situation is unique. It's like, and I think that that highlights perfectly when you do choose to become a mother, that you can, the things that they can bring into your life, the things that they can teach you. My children have been two of the greatest teachers. They're not always gentle about it, let me tell you.
Mhm. No.
They're not always gentle about it. So, but it's like they can be such great teachers in our lives and for our unique experiences. And I'm curious if you could if, deliver a message to young women who are thinking about entering into whether it's law or wanting to become a doctor. What is a message that you would love for these younger women, young adults, to hear from someone who has been through this experience, or even like in envisioning like you as a young child? Like what is a message you would go back and give her before embarking on this entire journey with your career?
I would say don't shrink. Don't
Mm,
shrink yourself. Because that's something I am turning 40 this year. This year's kind of a big one. We're gonna throw a lot into this year.
yeah, I love
But
it.
I turned 40 at the end of the year, and it took me a really long time, and even still, it's an ongoing battle. Don't shrink who you are, because I don't know the exact moment that it happened, but somewhere along the way, the things that I was told, often by males, um, they were they made me shrink down.
Yeah.
Like, I need to not reach so, or I need to be quieter. I need to be less of myself. I need to, don't shrink from the things that you want to do and the person you want to be. Don't let what someone else says to you stop you. Um, and that's something I think we're all learning. And in one respect, so I use this anecdote a lot, borrowing from my sister. When I graduated law school, this is kind of her experience, but when I graduated law school, she said, "I'm so proud of you." I have 2 older sisters, sorry, aside. I have 2 older sisters, this coming from the middle sister. But she said, "I'm so proud of you because I don't think I would have ever believed that I could do it.
Hmm.
It would not have occurred to me that I could have done it. So I'm proud that you did it because I think looking back, I could have done it. And I think just as women, we tend to hear messages that say, be less, be something, stick us in that box.
Yeah.
Don't shrink and don't be afraid because I think I spent a lot of years in fear. I got through it and I kind of pushed through it. But I think it took me a long time before I was able to stand up and say, you know what, you're wrong. Like I'm going to push past this situation. So I think not shrinking based on what someone else says. Knowing yourself, getting to know yourself. That's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
how many of us really even know ourselves?
Yeah.
And it takes us years to do it. I'm 40 and I'm still figuring myself out. And I think if I could tell the younger me something, figure yourself out. Figure out what you really want and who you really are and what your values are before you do anything else.
Yeah. I love that. Don't shrink. I absolutely love that. That's such a great message, not only for young women, but for young men in a different respect. But it's such an empowering thing to be reminded of because, like you said, we are delivered messages and narratives from such a young age that be quiet, stand in the background, stay in your lane. Who are you to think that you can? And this is what your value is in the world. And being able to overcome that, break those glass ceilings, not put yourself in a box because sometimes it's like us putting ourselves in a box because of the things that we've been told or the things that we believe that we need to do to keep ourselves safe. And so, also getting to know yourself, and with getting to know yourself, you get to create the safety. You get to create the safety within so that then you're not putting that safety or that validation in the hands of other people. And I think that that's such a great
Absolutely.
lesson for young women to learn. The earlier they learn it, because like you said, we're still learning it. We're still trying to untangle all
Yes.
those patterns and those messages and those beliefs. But it's like the faster that you learn it, the more free you will become.
Yes.
It's like, isn't that such a relief to think about? Think about your daughter. I think about my daughters. It's like, man, if I can just help you get there faster than I ever did, then you can find that freedom and liberation to be who you are so much sooner. And that's the wish. That's the goal, I think, in so much of my
Yeah.
purpose. And yeah, I think it's a really great message. I think that's a really great message.
Yeah. I love it. And I hope that we break the cycle with our daughters and that they can get there. I say like it took me to my 30s before I actually started knowing myself. And I'm like, I feel like that's a long time. There's some time wasted there. I made some goals, but I didn't have a clear understanding of myself within those until I was older. So I think it would be great if we could get them to that place without having to take up so much time.
Yeah.
We can't fix everything and we can't take all the heartache and all of the difficulties away and we wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
But how can we help you feel that freedom, like you said, without I feel like wasting so much time
Yeah,
on what
absolutely.
letting that either we're in our own box or other people put us there without wasting time staying in those boxes.
Yeah. Well, and just being like listening to the noise. Like I know so many times, like I was like taken out of alignment with who I really am so many times just from like listening to all of the noise of the outside world and learning to listen to our intuition and our own voice that comes from within. It's like that in my life and in my relationship, that's me talking to God. It's like my voice in my head, but like that's the energy of that higher power, and that's what's leading me to live more in alignment with that highest version of myself. So I think that that's such a cool, great message. um And so, speaking of messages, what message is it that you are building your campaign on?
So it's really on keeping integrity in the courts. You know,
Yeah.
when people are voting, they're voting for the person as much. And I would hope that, my, participation in the community, what the way I live would hopefully lead people to find trust if I were elected. Like, we want to trust that individual who's in that position and feel that the person making these judgments, it makes good judgment on their own, in their own lives. But I mean, one of the things we here locally that we struggle with attorneys. We don't have enough that are here in White County. Um, have offices in White County that are accessible to people, particularly like public defenders, or just really, I mean, I've had people ask me, hey, is there a local like White County attorney that you can refer me to? And we're definitely dwindling in numbers.
Mm,
So one of the messages I want is how can we know this is a good community. How can I as judge how can I help that? And so things I want to do are connecting with the law schools. How can we help them see that hey, you can be an attorney and you can have a good life and these communities are worth coming in for.
mm,
Um, this is a good place to practice. It's a good place to be. Um, but also to help prevent backlog in the courts. One of the things I want to focus on is getting more programming. I think so judicial philosophy, I think of this as like a parent. You have to teach your kids something. They do something and you say, "Okay, this is a teachable moment. Maybe here's something you missed or I missed teaching you or you missed along the way." So particularly with what Superior Court's handling right now, with adults, did they miss something along the way? Did we miss a step? Like, how can we help you? Whether it is addictions, mental health services. What can we do as a part of in the courts to provide those services and things like when people are coming out of jail, how can we help them get on their feet? Um, those are things that I want to support because I feel like if we're building the community and we want people to stop coming back, cycle after
mhm.
cycle, we have to offer something to help. I know Eric Jenke is running for sheriff. He's unopposed right now, but one of the things he wants to do is to bring services back into the jails, which I fully support because as a public defender, when I started practicing, service providers, therapists were allowed to go into the jails. COVID kind of stopped that. But I think bringing that back will be huge because I think of philosophy as we need to give you tools, give you education, and give you those opportunities. But then if you're continuing to come back and you're on use meth because we have an unfortunate problem with it. We have a lot of those cases, drug cases. If you're continuing to break the law and continuing to have possession or dealing things like that and you're coming back and you're not taking the tools that we're giving you the education and using them and being an effective part of the community, then sometimes jail is the option. So I think of it as like parents, like 3 strikes. I walk around with the trash bag. If there is stuff that has been sitting out, I always tell my kids, like, if I
Yeah.
say it 3 times, like, and it's not necessarily like a hard judicializing, obviously it can't apply the same way to every, so it's not like a
Yeah. No,
definite
I
three
get what you're
strike
saying. I
rule,
do the
but
same thing.
yeah, but you're like, all right, I've said it. You've been warned. Like
Mhm.
or they did something, and you're like, okay, we're going to talk about it. But then sometimes talk like after talking, and they're continuing. Like then you kind of have to bring the hammer down
Yeah.
a little bit. And so for people like and as far as criminal court, like jail may be the only option. Jail may be the best thing. That may be what they need. But I think we need to make sure that we're providing that because there is a need for mental health services. There's a lack of that, and a lot of people are suffering. I think the last 5 or 6 years has been hard. It's been a
Yeah.
weird time,
Mm,
and I think we've seen an even bigger uptick in those needs. But I think
yeah.
even connecting people with the community because I think that's one of the things talked a little bit about, we've lost that sense of community support, the neighbors, sort of the village. When you think
Yeah.
about parenting, you're like, sometimes it takes a village. And I think when you're talking about mental health, substance use, it takes a village to
Yeah.
really help people. So um I think what we need is, we need to offer those, but we also need to some at some point the revolving door has to stop. Like,
Yeah.
we have to make sure that we're not backlogging the courts, because keeping courts are efficient. People want cases resolved,
Yeah.
keeping those things moving.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be really important, but I do want to, one of the things I've talked about is we have a veterans court that's starting. Judge Thompson in circuit is worked on building a veterans court. Um, those are sort of special purpose courts where they offer those services, and there's a potential way out for those cases. And I
Yeah.
think something like a drug court, because we do have, like I said, we have a high volume, unfortunately, of drug substance use. Um, and I think trying to bring something like that, or connecting with another local county that maybe already has a program, or, how can we, and diving more into how can we do that. I know I work with some case managers now who recently got, one in particular recently got her master's degree, and her focus was on dealing with drug treatment and these drug treatment courts. And so she was able to share with me some things and how effective those can be, and how
Yeah.
effective they've been in other counties. So I think that's something that we can really address and we can work toward. It's never a promise of like, I'm going to make this happen in like 2 years. That's you have to be realistic about it. But I think being able to try to work on those things of, what can we do to make it better? What can we do to make the community better through the courts? Courts, judges, we can't make the law, we can't make policy. We are, they're limited in some ways, but looking at what ways can we do to make things better in the long
Yeah.
run.
Absolutely. And I think like hearing you talk about putting in systems that can help break cycles. It's like, how can we start to break these cycles, but then also implement boundaries when they are needed? And, offering extra services to help people, whether it is through mental health or addiction, is a really powerful way that could lead to planting seeds. Like you were saying, you can't make any promises, but what you can do is plant seeds and see where those seeds can grow, and trying to provide people with better opportunities and education, and laying foundational work that can help them get there. Because sometimes it's like missing pieces in their foundation, whether it was, how they were raised, or the opportunities that were provided for them, or the ways in which they became lost along the way. They didn't know themselves, just like us. But sometimes it takes people down paths that, you know, we didn't necessarily experience, or have, you don't necessarily understand, but you can have empathy for.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really cool thing. I think it's very necessary. I think connection is so important. And I think now in this world that we live in, we can feel so separated. It's like we feel we have so much access to people on a regular basis, but we still feel so lonely and separated from them at the same time. And so
Yeah.
building those bridges. I love the idea of like therapists coming back into the jails, and being able to help people and talk to people. And sometimes spending time incarcerated, maybe that's the boundary that somebody needs to be able to reevaluate their life, take time for, it's like that spending time alone will teach you a lot about yourself. And, sometimes that is the option. That is the path that they need to take. And so I think it's super great to hear that those are the things that you want to represent if elected into this position.
Yeah, I'm hoping, like I said, I hope to do some good, and work together with what we already have. White County is a great place to be, but I think, even when we talked about, personally being uncomfortable and helping grow, I think you can go through growth phases. Even when things are good, there are always ways to grow. We never stop learning. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can always learn something new. You know, over COVID, lots of people learned to make sourdough. You know, who knew? Right? Like that was it. People, on the
Yeah.
one hand, that's what came out of it. People learned to make bread again, things like that. I think, you know, we can try to make things better and make growth possible, um, leaving it better than the way we found it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Now, I'd love for you to tell everybody where they can connect with you. I know you have a Facebook page. Um, and yeah, just the ways at which people can connect with you, maybe learn even more about you or reach you if they have any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a Facebook page. Federer for Judge is the name of the Facebook page. I also have an email address. It is Federer, which I know I drop off the ER. I like to say the Fetterman somewhere along the way, just mumbled the ER, but it is FEDERER, the number 4 and Judge, JUDGE at gmail.com. So I have been telling everyone, email me questions, ask me things. I'm happy to meet with anyone, chat with anyone. They can message on Facebook as well. I'd love to get out and have people ask me questions.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to.
I love that. And I will put all of that information in the bio of this episode. So it'll be easily accessible for people to be able to get in contact with you. And the primary election is May 5th, Tuesday, May 5th, correct?
Yes, early voting has already started. There are a couple locations. Currently, you can vote at the White County Annex Building during office hours. So it began April 7th to May 4th. It's Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 3:30. And Monday, May 4th is 8 to noon. And then they do have a couple Saturdays. This coming Saturday, Brookston Federated Church, April 25th, 9 to 4, and May 2nd, 9 to 4 at the Brookston Federated Church. You can vote early. I would say vote early, vote often, or, vote on election day because, for many people, some of you have the day off. So if you have the day off, go on May 5th. Voting is open. I always appreciate our poll workers who are up at the crack of dawn because voting begins at 6 a.m. and they're there setting up well before that. So I appreciate them for that. It's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And there are actually 6 different locations throughout the county. Brookston Federated Church, Buffalo Fire Station, the Carol White REMC in Monticello, Faith Connection in Idaville, Monon Community Church in Monon, the White County Annex Building, and the Wolcott Community Building in the park.
Perfect. Perfect. That is so great. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I feel like we had such a great conversation, and I just hope that our listeners can, just see you through a different lens and a different perspective and be encouraged to go out and vote on May
Hopefully
5th.
everybody does. Go vote, whether it's for me or not. Go vote because that's the way we make change. That's the way we
Yeah.
move things forward. So even if it's not for me, go and vote.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you
Thank
so
you so much.
much. And as always, to my listeners, thank you so much for being here, sharing in this conversation with us. I will drop all of this information in the bio of the episode. If you have any questions for Ashley, go follow her Facebook page. And if you want to come and say hi to me, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook at Turn the Page Podcast. If you feel called, I'd love for you to leave a rate or a review, only if it's nice, you know the deal. And if you feel like you resonated with this conversation, I would love for you to share it with a friend. Okay. All right. Love you guys. Bye bye.